critical thinking. And they've made it very clear that they're willing to flex their muscles in order to achieve their ambitions. Now, China is in effect now has become the second most important country in the world. It's the second largest economy. It's the biggest exporting country in the world. And if a country like this uses the kind of vocabulary that it does and expresses the kind of geopolitical ambitions that it does, and what we have seen is President Xi Jinping decrying Western values, decrying democracy, now presenting the Chinese political and development model for developing countries as much more efficient and result-oriented than the decadent Western democracy. Now, there's a big challenge on the ground. So China has really become a very disruptive power, and we have to take this into account as we are the direct neighbors of China, and we have to handle China's threat. A few other points that I like to make is that the Indo-Pacific and the role of the big powers in the Indo-Pacific and India's challenges are very, very complex. And there is no easy answer about the larger strategy that we should follow. At the end of the day, there is no answer to our challenges unless we build up our own economy, we build up our own military strength. Now, if you look back 20 years or even less, China was not considered the kind of threat that it is today. It is because it has grown double digits over the last 30 years, though their growth has slowed down in recent years, which has released enormous resources for them to build up their military strength. So our real answer lies in hopefully double-digit growth, but even if we can't achieve that, at least sustained 8% growth, which would then release enough financial resources to increase our defense budget and build up our military strength and actually concretely achieve through indigenous development of our defense sector, which we have been unable to do all these years because of apart from lack of resources. Of course, there are also procedural issues in how we manage our defense sector. But without these financial resources, it's just not possible to match up to China and to have any credible Indian Ocean strategy which would really help us to protect our long-term security. In fact, the defense budget has gone down. Some analysts are saying that our defense budget today is the lowest since 1962 at 1.57 or 1.6%, which is not satisfactory at all. Few other things let me say with regard to the Indo-Pacific and our strategy. One is that independently of what the recent developments have been in conjunction with other powers, we've been pretty active in the Indian Ocean, thanks to our Navy, which has actually gone ahead and engaged in naval diplomacy, even when there was no particular clear directive from the government and where the Ministry of External Affairs really had no particular role in this. The former Chief of Naval Staff is here, and he would elaborate on this. We have the Indian Ocean Naval Symposium, which we have also the Milan exercises. The last one, I think about 27 nations participated. We're having it again, where we bring the navies of so many countries together. We have bilateral naval exercises with a whole host of countries apart from the United States. We have it with we have it with France, we have it with UK, we have it with Sri Lanka, we have it with Singapore, etc., etc. We've also, many years ago, initiated the Indian Ocean Rim Association in order to bring all the littoral states of the Indian Ocean together. And very importantly, we have, during President Macron's visit here a few days ago, and he visited Varanasi, we've signed another joint vision document, this time with France, on the Indian Ocean region, because France is an Indian Ocean power, because it has its overseas territories in Reunion, Mayotte, etc., etc., and the east coast of Africa is very important, both in terms of what our own interests are there in this area and the Chinese penetration into this area. And France is beginning to get concerned also about the implications of China's presence, not only in the Indian Ocean, but also in the Pacific Island region. So we've signed this document with France, and this is a big change from the time when we used to talk about the Indian Ocean as a zone of peace. We didn't want any foreign power to be in the Indian Ocean, because we thought that the presence of foreign powers was a threat to Indian security. But how things have evolved and changed, that we have now a joint vision document with the United States, as I mentioned, and one with France. So the short point I'm making is that we have been very active in our own way in the Indian Ocean area in order to showcase our political commitment to this region, and the fact that we dominate geographically the Indian Ocean, and build a sense of confidence in the other countries about the potential of India as a net security provider. Very lately we've done something which is remarkable, which we have now signed an agreement with Oman to get access to their bases, naval bases. This is the first time that in a Gulf country we have formalized such an agreement. And with Abu Dhabi, for the first time in 2018, we'll have a joint naval exercise. At the political level, also, apart from what I mentioned is happening on the military front in terms of our naval cooperation with US, Japan, and Australia. Incidentally, we have bilateral exercises with Australia too. We have also reinforced all this in terms of having a political level dialogue. We have a 2+2 dialogue with the United States, which means the Foreign Ministry and the Defense Ministry, or Defense Minister and Foreign Minister, having a bilateral dialogue with the United States in the 2+2 format. We have the same with Japan, and we have the same with Australia. And we have a trilateral dialogue at the Foreign Minister level between US, India, and Japan. And we have a trilateral dialogue between India, Australia, and Japan, but at the Foreign Secretary level. And for the first time, we've had a quad dialogue that is India, Australia, Japan, and the United States recently in Manila at the official level. There's some reluctance to raise it to the political level, but I hope that we will do so in order to reinforce this quadrilateral dialogue. Now, let me mention a few other points, some other points which might be relevant in this regard. Now, why is the South China Sea? I mean, we talked about Indo-Pacific, so why is the South China Sea important to us? Now, 40% of our trade goes through the South China Sea. We have oil exploration contracts with Vietnam. But over and above that, we must keep this in mind in terms of our longer term thinking and strategy, that if China succeeds in pushing the United States back from the Western Pacific, which is what their goal is. They want to be able to dilute the current US domination of the Western Pacific by developing strategies and weaponry and capacities which would increase the vulnerability of the US naval forces in this region and push them back away. Now, if they succeed in doing that, the corollary of that is quite obvious, that they will then be able to put into action their Indian Ocean strategy, because at the moment they are blocked in the South China Sea, in the Western Pacific. But if they succeed in opening up that space for themselves, then their access to the Indian Ocean becomes that much easier. Therefore, our interest is that they should remain blocked, and we should support the United States and Japan and Australia in their strategies to make it difficult for them to break through the first island chain, which is keeping them sufficiently blocked. Now, if they do that, and this is what I've been telling our French and European and German and European interlocutors, that it's going to be a problem for you too, because if the United States is weakened, the effects of that weakness will be felt in the transatlantic relationship, and Europe will feel the pressure from this, and therefore the Europeans have to wake up and take much more interest in what is happening in the Indian Ocean, and they've begun to do so. France is now joining patrols in the South China Sea. Britain is also joining these patrols. So the overall situation is developing in our favor. Now, of course, in the Indian Ocean area, we do not have exactly the same problems as in the South China Sea, because in the South China Sea there is this whole problem of overflights and freedom of navigation and sovereignty issues, whereas in the Indian Ocean there are no sovereignty issues. India has solved its maritime boundary with all our neighboring countries, so there is no outstanding issue. There are no territorial claims, and there's no problem, as I said, of overflights and freedom of navigation. The last point I'd like to make is that all this while, the only regional security architecture that was being conceived was by the ASEAN. The ASEAN was playing a central role in terms of developing progressively a regional security architecture. Even the East Asia Security Summit, in which all the countries, major countries, US, Russia, are present, China, that is also ASEAN-led. And ASEAN is very sensitive about its role, the centrality of its role. Now with this Quad that is being formed, India, US, Japan, Australia, there is an issue with regard to the centrality of the ASEAN, because all these four countries are not part of ASEAN. And if we are developing hedging strategies beyond what the ASEAN has been engaged in all these years, there is need for a better understanding between ASEAN and the four countries about their respective roles. To my mind, ASEAN is ineffective. China has diplomatically succeeded in dividing them. They are not countries which are willing to take a strong position. In fact, it is amazing how, despite the fact that Philippines won its case under UNCLOS on all points, President Duterte of Philippines preferred to deal bilaterally with China and not to raise the issue of UNCLOS or the arbitration award. But we have to build confidence in ASEAN, especially in countries like Indonesia and some others who are involved in territorial disputes with China, that what we are doing actually supplements whatever they may want to do in terms of security vis-a-vis China. But this is a diplomatic exercise that we have to engage in. Now, I think I've covered most of the points that I wanted to raise, and I think I have exhausted the time that was given to me. And maybe in the question and answer session, if you have any questions still left on your mind about what this Indo-Pacific staged strategy is, concept is, and what is the role of the big powers, and what is India's interest in it, and what are the challenges ahead, and how we should manage the whole the development of this concept, and make sure that it bolsters our security and our vision of things, rather than India getting caught in the strategies of others, and then exposing itself potentially to a situation where we face additional challenges from China. And I'll end once again by saying that there is no answer to our solutions. Absolutely no answer to us problems, not solutions. Problems unless we develop our own indigenous manufacturing defense sector, unless we are independent in this regard. I recall a conversation which one of our former defense ministers had with President Chirac of France when I was ambassador there. And the French president said that no country can have an independent foreign policy unless they can manufacture their own defense equipment. And France has developed that independence, which allows them to be both within NATO and be outside NATO when it doesn't suit their interests. And that is what we have to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Sibal. And the line he gave us, the ambassador gave us in the last line, basically that no country can have an independent foreign policy unless it starts producing its own defense equipments, lies the crux of, अगर आप दुनिया को देखिएगा तो चारों तरफ जो एक जद्दोजहद है, संघर्ष है, उसमें ये एक बहुत बड़ा इसमें बीज की बात उन्होंने कही है कि जब तक आप अपने हथियार आत्मरक्षा के लिए बनते हैं, हथियार हमेशा आक्रमण के लिए नहीं बनते हैं, लेकिन जब तक आप अपने हाथों से अपनी रक्षा करने के लिए सक्षम नहीं होंगे, दुनिया में संघर्ष तो निरंतर जारी रहेगा. Now, before inviting our next speaker, there is a slight change in schedule because General Hasnan has an important meeting, something has come up. आज उनको शाम तक दिल्ली पहुंचना है. So with very heavy heart, we'll have to let him go. But before asking him to come on stage, there is a very deep sense of gratitude towards General Hasnan. Because जाने मैंने कहा ना कि हम लोग सिर्फ एक आइडिया लेके घूम रहे थे, आइडिया ज़्यादा बढ़ नहीं रही थी, तो एक तरह से he acted as the mentor for the whole program. He basically, why should anybody listen to me or Kashi Manthan, such stalwarts, as to come to Banaras? Because we did not have a profile of this sort. So he acted as the mentor, और उनकी मेल ने जादू वाला काम किया. और ये बेसिकली हम लोग की तो मेहनत है, लेकिन जो इंटेलेक्ट है वो जनरल हसनैन का है. So he is basically the patron of the whole Kashi Manthan. And now we have 5 patrons now, basically, because जो आ गया हम लोग के चंगुल में, अब तो हम छोड़ेंगे नहीं उनको, उनके पीछे पड़े रहेंगे हर हाल में. So next topic is India-Pakistan military and strategic perspective, including Jammu and Kashmir. अब इसमें सबकी रुचि थोड़ी ज़्यादा बढ़ेगी, क्योंकि पाकिस्तान मतलब बस मारो पीटो काटो, कुछ इसी तरह का बस चलता रहता है 24 घंटे. बट वी नीड टू अंडरस्टैंड कि व्हाट इज दिस कॉन्फ्लिक्ट. ये कॉन्फ्लिक्ट जो हिंदुस्तान पाकिस्तान के बीच में है, इसके पीछे ड्राइवर्स क्या हैं, इसके पीछे कारण क्या है। विभाजन एक कारण था, लेकिन विभाजन के कारण बर्लिन विभाजित भी हुआ, जुड़ भी गया, लेकिन जो इस तरह के एक्सट्रीम रिएक्शंस हिंदुस्तान पाकिस्तान को एक दूसरे के प्रति होते हैं, आई डू नॉट थिंक एनी two countries have that kind of extreme reactions. So this talk is basically trying to understand कि what drives this conflict, how, and there is a very important segment. आपको समझना पड़ेगा कि पाकिस्तानी डीप स्टेट, it is the deep state, the पाकिस्तानी आर्मी, basically पाकिस्तान की जो पॉलिसी है वहाँ की आर्मी चलाता है. So how does the Pakistani army view India as an adversary? And उसके सडनली आप लोगों ने देखा होगा बॉर्डर पे, लाइन ऑफ कंट्रोल पे, लाइन ऑफ एक हेवी शेलिंग है, एक कॉन्फ्लिक्ट हमारे जैसा लगता है ना बढ़ सा गया है, न्यूज चैनल्स पे सब जगह दिखता है. तो ये समझने का प्रयास है कि इज इट जो चाइनीज इन्वेस्टमेंट हो रहा है पाकिस्तान में, द CPEC, the China Pakistani Economic Corridor, has this given the confidence to Pakistan to basically नहीं अब हमारे बड़े भाई आ गए हैं, अब हम हिंदुस्तान से लड़ सकते हैं क्योंकि बड़ा भाई हमारे पीछे खड़ा है. So basically, Hasnain sir ki talk, I think, will revolve around these issues, and I would like to invite General Hasnain to please come on stage and share his views. Thank you, sir.